We're back. And by we, I mean me. How's it going, everybody? I hope you're well on this Tuesday, this cold and wet Tuesday morning. At least it's cold and wet where I am. I don't know about where you are, but where I am, it is very cold. And I kind of like it, but I wouldn't mind it being a little bit warmer right now. At least up in my fortress of solitude where I work, it is very, very chilly. Hi, Biffer. How's it going? It must be early for yes, it is 1:30 p.m. in the UK. Um, I wanted to do a midday musing. There's some stuff that I was reading about yesterday in relation to Netflix and their Chronicles of Narnia adaptations that I wanted to just sit and have a bit of a chat about it. This isn't going to be a long one. This isn't going to be a long one. I got work to do. I'm during the day. This particular week, I'm spending a lot of time working on my PhD. So I'm trying to finish my research paper, which is a pain in the butt, and I don't really like it all that much. But you get to a certain point in the day where you're like, I need to sit and talk about something else, and here we go. I thought, here we go. Here's something to talk about. Here's something to talk about. So, but I hope you're doing well, Biffer, and thanks for tuning in. Um, Chronicles of Narnia, yeah, that's an interesting topic to me. Once this machine gets going with Netflix, this is something I'm going to follow quite rigorously because I love Narnia. I grew up reading the books. Those were some of the first books that had a big impact on me as a kid. I remember, sitting around and having them read to me. Then I remember getting old enough to read myself and then reading them for myself. And I loved them. They were really important to me as a kid. Um, and yeah, no, Bifford, same. You're praying for a good reboot. I am too. I am too. Um, yeah, yeah. You prayed for a good Lord of the Rings Amazon reboot too. Well, I mean, this is the thing. This is the thing. This is what has me. This is what has me nervous. Is I don't know. I don't know what Netflix will do. I feel like it's been a while since I've seen something on Netflix that has blown my mind. I loved initially. I loved things like Stranger Things and House of Cards and a few other bits and bobs. But I got to be honest, for the most part, there's a lot of stuff on Netflix now that I'm not interested in. It's hard. The the most interesting thing that we watch on Netflix at the moment is Love Is Blind, which is just utter garbage, but I find it fascinating to watch and hilarious. So yeah, Netflix hasn't really been doing a lot of things that I'm interested in. We watched The Witcher, which I never read the books, but just by watching the show, it felt sort of visually looked good, relatively well acted, um, but some kinks in the writing. Not the best storytelling. I think with The Witcher. Um, when it comes to Narnia, I feel like the best adaptation that we've ever had is hands down the BBC version. I don't know if you've seen that. If you have not, find it. It's available on. I don't. I mean, I think it's just on DVD. I don't know if they ever did a Blu-ray release of that, but if they did, I would buy it. But I thoroughly enjoyed the original BBC adaptation from the 80s. It was quite interesting. I think it has the best music. It has the best voice for Aslan. Has a relatively decent cast. Um, but it also has some cheat. It has some BBC quality issues, that you would expect from a BBC show, similar to Doctor Who back in the day, where the visuals and the costumes and whatnot are not always great. I mean, Aslan is this incredibly looking giant puppet, animatronic puppet lion, and he's amazing to look at. But when he talks, his mouth just goes like this, up and down. He's like, "Hi, how are you today?" But this is, his voice just doing, his mouth just doing that, which it's as a kid you kind of don't really care about it. As a grown up, you kind of think, "Oh, okay, yeah, that's on the cheap side." But at the same time, what was so great about the BBC adaptation is they stuck so closely to C.S. Lewis's books that you were able to immerse yourself in the world of Narnia. So that was my first visual, exposure to the world of Narnia. But I remember not being able to see the films until we had read all the books, which was painful because I was wanting to watch them and read at the same time. So anyway, there's some stuff, there's some information out there about the new one. But oh yeah, actually before I get into that, um, I'll briefly mention the Disney movies. I think the oh, I should show you this for those who haven't seen the original BBC adaptation. This is it. This is the lion, and I mean this lion looks great. You can't deny that this lion does not look badass. He does. Um, oh, I remember there being lots of jokes about these four actors who played the kids when I was young, but they're pretty good. They're still pretty good. But yeah, the BBC version was one of my favorite adaptations. Um, I guess then you kind of fast forward to what is it 2005 when Disney took over, and gosh, I had I had some uncertainties about that. Even at that point, I wasn't really sure what to think about Disney doing Narnia. They were coming off the success of Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings had finished in 2003. I think Golden Compass had come out, but it maybe tanked. And I think that was Disney. I might be wrong on that. But yeah, so 2005, you get the big reboot, the one that's meant to be, finally, Narnia is getting the Hollywood treatment. It's going to look great. It's going to be amazing. Um, Biffer, you say that the 2-hour 30-minute version of the BBC Narnia is free on. Oh my God, is it? Okay, go on YouTube if you're. Yeah, go watch it. It's wonderful. Um, I watch the BBC Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe every Christmas. So I am well every Christmas season, not on like Christmas Day, but every Christmas season I will watch it as well because I think it's just so charming. It's so good. Also, the guy who plays Mr. Tumnus is amazing. Oh, and the actor who plays the White Witch, she steals the show. She's actually in all of the BBC adaptations because the BBC did Lion, the Witch, and Wardrobe, Prince Caspian, Voyage of the Dawn Treader, and The Silver Chair. So they did a big chunk of them. But the lady who plays the White Witch, I think she is in every single adaptation, every single book, playing a different character. But she's so like versatile that you kind of don't realize it. But the lady who played the White Witch in the BBC version she's absolutely amazing. Actually, I'll find her name. BBC Narnia. That's what I wanted. Narnia. Show. Let's see what we got. Barbara Kellerman. That is, yes, she was the White Witch. She was the White Witch. I will tell you what. I'll do one better for you. I will show you a picture of her as the White Witch. And so in my head, like when I read the books or re-listen to the audiobooks or whatever, her performance is, in my opinion, the performance. I don't think, I know we had what was the lady's name who was here we go. This is what I'm talking about. She was great. Barbara Kellerman was absolutely great. But then Tilda Swinton, who was the White Witch, that was it. Tilda Swinton, she was the White Witch in the BBC version. Doesn't hold a candle. Doesn't hold a candle to Barbara. Not at all. Not at all. Um, But there was a little bit of excitement for the BBC Narnia, or not for the Disney Narnia. I was kind of like, okay, maybe this will be fun. Maybe this will be good. It could be good. Um, and I think my first my first inkling of disappointment uh, was when I heard about the casting of Liam Neeson as Aslan. I was like, how is Liam Neeson going to be Aslan? That voice. I don't think of Aslan and think of Liam Neeson and think that's a match made in heaven. I feel like that's stunt casting, because he's Liam Neeson. He's the Taken guy. He's he's the bad guy from Batman Begins. Is he Aslan? Eh. Anyway, when the Disney version came out, boy did that suck. It sucked hard. It didn't hold a candle to the BBC adaptation. It was relatively close in terms of adaptations as they go. The Disney version wasn't badly adapted in terms of taking the story from the page and telling it on screen. It was quite faithful. That's what I mean. It was quite faithful. So I never had any problems with that aspect. There were a few changes here and there, but for the most part, it was more or less the thing. But it lacked emotion. It lacked really there are really incredible stars in this show. I mean, Tilda Swinton is a great actor. Liam Neeson is a good actor. The kids are pretty decent actors, and it has a whole host of really good people. James McAvoy is Tumnus, really cool, great actors, but their performances were all so phony, so limp. I didn't really get into them. But also even the production design, like there was all the bragging because Disney were using Weta and all that kind of nonsense, right? But I remember there's a bit where one of the Minotaurs like stands up and like roars and like shakes his head, but like his horns are shaking, and I'm like, this is meant to be a big Hollywood movie. This is meant to be Lord of the Rings, quality Narnia, and the horns on the puppet heads are shaking when the person inside the costume is jostling around, and I'm like, that shouldn't be happening, but it is, and that's a bit pathetic. So that was something. So I didn't. So yeah. So the Narnia ones, and they kind of carried on, and the more they went on, I think the stupider they got. Um, Prince Caspian was, I think, by far the worst. Um, it's probably one of my favorite books by in the Chronicles of Narnia is the Prince Caspian novel. I love it. Always loved it. I loved the idea. I love the themes behind it. I love the sort of idea of you go from the Lion, the Witch's Wardrobe, in which Aslan finally returns to Narnia, peace and all that kind of stuff is restored, the White Witch is disposed, um, and then so many hundreds of years later, after this big grand moment, people begin to forget. People forget how great Aslan is, the things that he did for them, the things that the four kids as kings and queens did for Narnia. It's over time, as time passes, it becomes these great things become myths, become legend, and possibly forgotten or ignored and not held to the same kind of reverence as maybe it should. And so this is a really great story about remembering, and sort of being exposed to this being re-exposed to Aslan and who Aslan is and what Aslan represents for Narnia and all that kind of stuff. And sort of, yeah. So I love that. So this film, one, I was like, why did they cast a 30-year-old dude to play Prince Caspian? That didn't make any sense to me. He should have been like 10. He should have been a 10-year-old dude. On top of that, they added some weird romance with Susan and Prince Caspian that again was just really bonkers. I never understood why in the world they needed to do that. I don't think they did. I think that was just silliness. So I didn't really take much to Prince Caspian. I did go see it in the cinema. But number of my friends sort of liked it. But it left me feeling, that definitely wasn't the best thing. Um, then of course Disney were like, hey, we're done. We're done. We've done two of these films. They're not taking off like Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter or any of that stuff. So be gone. They sold it to Fox, which is ironic because now Disney owns, well, I guess they have the rights to these films again, which is funny. Um, Fox came back with the third movie, The Voyage of the Dawn Treader, which was interesting. I was glad that they were, I guess, trying to continue, but at the same time, it felt a little sad and a little desperate because it was like, well, you've already had two limp versions. Like maybe don't do Voyage of the Dawn Treader. Maybe leave it. But there was all this talk about trying to, Fox was going to, I think, revitalize it. They were really going to try and conclude the series and hinting at taking it, to its natural conclusion, which is the last battle. That never happened. At all. I Voyage of the Dawn Treader is the most forgetful of these movies, of these adaptations. I remember almost nothing about it except for the fact that they brought the White Witch back for the kind of a specific sequence in the like a dream world thing where the Dawn Treader is sailing through some very murky waters in which you kind of visualize things, temptations or scary things, and Edmund is tempted by this vision of the White Witch once again, and that was the other thing about the BBC, the not the BBC, but the Disney into the Fox films is every movie had to have some sort of callback to the White Witch, which I just thought was really dumb. I didn't think you needed it. It having and all it had to do with Edmund. Edmund was a big moment for Edmund in the Prince Caspian, and it was another big moment for Edmund in the Voyage of the Dawn Treader. And it's almost like he has like White Witch PTSD, and it's like no, he doesn't. He moved on. He's fine. Like we don't need to keep harking on with this. And really these are just cheap gimmicks. Oh, Tilda Swinton's going to reprise her role for 30 seconds. They're just there to get butts and seats. But not enough butts came, and obviously after the Voyage of the Dawn Treader, done. Narnia went on ice, which I can't blame Fox for stopping after this. The only thing I did like, actually, okay. So I remember this other thing about Voyage of the Dawn Treader, and this is the end credits. The end credits are rather nice because they use artwork from the original books and sort of bring it to life and color it, and it's the art. The end credits are actually really the most exciting thing about this movie. So, anywho, Netflix are apparently eyeing Greta Gerwig for to direct the Narnia movies. I think in the article it says they might be doing a couple. I'm not going to read this article or anything like that, but we'll just hang on this for. Actually, I don't want to hang on that. We'll hang on this. So yeah, it's come out that Netflix are eyeing someone to potentially direct these movies, or at least a couple of the movies. And I tweeted about it because what else am I going to do? And I got into some conversations last night with a few of my author pals and a few randos and whatnot on Twitter about this, and it got me thinking about how to approach these books and how to adapt them. Obviously, Netflix by this point, I'm assuming, are well into that that phase of trying to work out what they're going to do. But still, I got some free advice for you, Netflix. So sit back and maybe learn a thing or two from me, I guess. What was interesting to me is when I saw the news last night that who they're eyeing to direct that they're looking for directors for these adaptations. What was the most interesting thing was reading the comments, and the comments underneath in the thread there were a lot of people who were saying, I hope they start with the first one. And then there were people like me who were like, uh, what do you mean by the first one? And they're like, well, obviously the magician's nephew. And then the responses are, well, that's not the first one. And then people are like, what? What are you talking about? What do you mean? Of course it's the first one. It's how it works. It's chronological. That's the first one. And then people are like, well, actually, no. Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe is the first one. That is the first book that was published by C.S. Lewis. Um, Biffer, you say Greta YYY Gerwig. I want Guillermo del Toro or Peter Jackson. I mean, look, I looked up Greta. Her IMDb page seems fine. She's got a good amount of well-reviewed things attached to her name. I haven't seen any of them, so I can't comment on her as a filmmaker. I just can't. So maybe she is the right person for the job. Maybe she's not. I couldn't say. I'll give her the benefit of the doubt because I mean at this point for me why not? I would have to go watch her movies and stuff like that to make a good opinion on that. But to your point of wanting someone like Guillermo del Toro or Peter Jackson, I do agree that that Chronicles of Narnia needs someone who is going to shepherd it in the same way Peter Jackson did Lord of the Rings. I think there's that famous clip of Peter Jackson where he talks about how, him and Fran were very adamant to not inject any of their personal politics or any kind of reflective politics of what was going on at the time that they were making the movies. They were very careful to really just stick to what Tolkien wrote. Obviously, something Amazon Lord of the Rings failed miserably to do. So the Netflix series needs someone like a Jackson to shepherd it. Absolutely. Otherwise, we'll see how it goes. The fact that we don't hear about that or know that there is someone in that kind of position or someone who has that sort of love and affection as Jackson did for Tolkien. It's worrisome. I remember in early interviews for the Disney Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, there were talks with the director of that film, whose name I can't remember. I think he did like Shrek or something like that. And I remember he was saying how they were so impressed with him, because if they didn't want to do the book, if they didn't want to do the film like the book, then he wasn't going to do it. And there was all this like, oh yeah, he really loves the source material, really wants to make it pop. Da, 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 da. And I mean, to his credit, sure, the film, the Disney one, like I said, it does relatively follow what you get in the book, but it does it without any umph, which is the disappointing thing. So you need someone like Peter Jackson who has the love and affection, but also has the ability to really bring that material to life. Maybe Greta does. I'm hopeful. I hope that she does. Put it that way, because I do not want to see another bad adaptation of the Chronicles of Narnia. I think if we get that, gosh, that's gonna really suck. That's gonna really suck. So fingers crossed that we don't get that. Anyway, like I said, I was reading the comments. I was reading the comments on Twitter in response to the news coming out, and all the people were saying, "I hope they do the Magician's Nephew first because that's the first one." They've always done Blind the Wardrobe first. Why are they doing that? It's fascinating to me that people don't realize that The Lion, the Witch, and Wardrobe is the first one in the series. It is the first one that C.S. Lewis put out. The Magician's Nephew is the second to last. It's book 6. It's book 6 in the lineup. Now, there's letters out there from C.S. Lewis in which he talked about how he wrote The Lion, the Witch, and Prince Caspian, Voyages on Treasure, Silverchair, and every time he was writing one, he didn't realize he was ever going to come back to that world. And then he did The Horse and His Boy, which is an kind of like X-Men Days of Future Past. It's an in-betweequel, in that it takes place during, Susan, Peter, Edmund, and Lucy's reign over Narnia, which is a really great book, and quite interesting thing that he did by Lewis did by going back and telling one of the stories that that they in one of their adventures. I think that was really cool. Um, and then he did The Magician's Nephew, which is a prequel, full on prequel. It is spoiler alert. If you don't know anything about The Magician's Nephew, I guess walk away for about 30 seconds and then come back. But The Magician's Nephew takes place. There's a famous line at the beginning of it in which it says, while Sherlock Holmes is still living at 221B Baker Street, which I like this idea that like Sherlock Holmes exists or hypothetically exists in this world. I just find that so fun that C.S. Lewis put that in there. But so it takes place in the late Victorian period, right? And it follows a young boy named Diggory, who his uncle is a mad scientist who lives in an attic and has invented some magical rings that take you to if you put them on, you're transported to a wood, and in this wood are all these different pools. If you drop into a pool, you are then transported into another world. So it's this, you put the ring on and you're in this like world between worlds, and these pools are the portals. And effectively, what The Magician's Nephew is an origin story for Narnia. This young boy Diggory, with his friend Polly, end up falling into a world. They end up waking up a an evil woman, a witch, who is hell bent on control. And she then runs loose in what will become Narnia. And in this book, you obviously meet Aslan while he is creating Narnia, while he's bringing the world to life, the animals to life, giving them the power of speech, all this kind of stuff. It's great. It's great. And then you come to find out that this witch that they let loose in Narnia will eventually become the White Witch. And Diggory, when he comes back to the real world, ends up planting an apple core in his garden, which then grows into a big tree. But that tree eventually falls down, and he has the tree turned into a wardrobe. So then you realize, okay, this kid Diggory is the old man from The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and it's all sort of comes around like that. I remember the first time I made that connection as a kid, and it blew my mind. I had no idea that little Diggory, was going to end up being the old Professor Kirk, in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and I loved how C.S. Lewis tied this all together. I like how C.S. Lewis explained why there is a lamppost in the middle of a wood. Why the White Witch is there. Whys. I love it. Why there is a wardrobe that is a gateway into Narnia. It all makes sense perfectly. It's wonderful, and it's a great revelation to get so late in the series, and I love that. So anyway, so as people are saying that they want to see The Magician's Nephew first, I'm sitting here thinking, no. I won't be surprised if Netflix decides to do The Magician's Nephew first, but I think that's a mistake. I think they shouldn't do that. I think they really should stick with The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and do these stories in publication order. The reason what has happened is in 1994, HarperCollins took over the publishing rights of the Chronicles of Narnia, and at the discretion of Douglas Gresham, C.S. Lewis's stepson, decided to reorder the books in chronological order based off of a couple of letters from C.S. Lewis, and apparently Lewis saying to Douglas that they should be read in this order. But the thing is, they're not written in that order. And while you can read them in chronological order, there's something quite magical about going into the going being having the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe be the thing that introduces you to Narnia, because it's so whimsical and magical. Why is there this wardrobe that gets me to Narnia? Why is there a lamppost in the middle of the wood? It's wonderful. And when you if you start with the magician's nephew, you begin to, I suppose, tarnish a little bit of that wonder. It's not as wondrous as it once was because you know the thing, right? But when you don't know the thing, it's more exciting, I think, for viewers. Now, obviously, there's going to be a bunch of adults, a bunch of people who've read Lord of the or not read Narnia, know the story, get it, da, 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 da. So they're like, well, I don't give a shit. Start with Magician's Nephew. We've seen The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe how many times now? There's two adaptations of it in the last 40 years. We don't want to see. Let's start with something different for a change. Let's finally see The Magician's Nephew. I hear you. I hear you. But I just remember back to being a kid, and maybe this is nostalgia, superseding here or whatnot. But I think no. I really think if you stuck with The Lion, the Witch, and Wardrobe, when you get to Magician's Nephew, it's gonna blow kids' minds, and I think that was just that it is stuck with me so vividly, all of these years later. So I really think they should do that. I think it would be smart if they went with The Lion, the Witch, and Wardrobe first, because what's so wonderful is thinking about how to sort of tie some of this stuff in. Um, as the novels progress, characters end up going different routes. Susan goes to America, things like that. Peter begins to do some work with Professor Kirk. It's pretty cool. With the Magician's Nephew, it has this really unique opportunity to set the scene for the last book, which is called The Last Battle. In almost in the same way that the Hobbit movie, which is not the best, it's got some problems, but in the way that the first Hobbit movie introduces you by taking you to the beginning of the Lord of the Rings, right? To the Fellowship of the Ring, where Bilbo is writing in his home. You could reverse that idea with with the Magician's Nephew. You tell that whole story, and then the ending of that book can return you to Old Man Diggory, who we would have seen in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And then you make the big, the really big connection. And then you can use the Magician's Nephew as a sting. That you can put a sting at the end of it that then links up to the last battle, because the last battle is a big return for most of the major characters, including Professor Kirk, including Peter, Edmund, Lucy, right? So it really, it could serve such a good function by being left to the second to last in the process. In my opinion, I think that would really help it. I think if they went that route, it would be great. Now the other problem that I suppose you might have then is The Horse and His Boy. This movie that takes place during the kids' reigns. The problem is The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe sees the kids return home, but in Narnia they literally grow up and become adults. They stay there for you know 20, 30 years or something like that, right? So they're a very long time. And when they leave the wardrobe, they revert back to being kids. So it's complicated when you would want to do The Horse and His Boy if you do The Horse and His Boy. Now this is where I'm probably going to piss people off, but I'm like, hey, maybe just don't do The Horse and His Boy. But at the same time, maybe just do two prequels Do your Lion the Witch, your Prince Caspian, your Voyage of the Dawn Treader, your Silver Chair. Do your prequels, do your in between prequels, your Horse and His Boy, your Magician's Nephew, and then conclude with the last battle. Now it's unconventional. It's not the way people probably want to see it or want to read it. Um, I understand that. I suppose the other thing is you could do the Horse and His Boy in between the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe and Prince Caspian. That is another option if you really want to do some sort of chronology with stuff. Um, I think maybe sliding that in between those two would still be fine. But I'm adamant. I am adamant that I think Magician's Nephew should come at the end because, or second to last, because I think that still just the impact of that moment when you understand even more the world of Narnia before you before you get to that last battle. The juxtaposition of creation and destruction um, is wonderful, and I think Netflix would miss a trick to not keep that where it is. Um, I don't know. We'll see how it goes, though. We'll see how it goes. That's my free advice. That's my free advice for Netflix. You've keep it where it is. Don't muck this about, in my opinion. The other thing I think would be fun, and I don't know if they would do this. I don't even know how many people even recognize them, but I think it would be great if the BBC cast from all of the as many of them that are around and would want to do it. I think it'd be great to see the BBC cast for the Chronicles of Narnia come back and do like a brief cameo in all of the films in one way or another. Um, the only other thing that I was thinking about with this is when you look at the BBC version and you look at the Disney version, this was kind of this idea came to me birthed out of a conversation I was having on Twitter, which a fellow writer was was saying that it would be nice to not have such kind of posh posh kids play the Pevensies, and I'm in agreement with that. It is funny that in the BBC version and in Disney they really do find the most posh sounding kids that they could possibly find um, for these roles. You really the sense that you get from the Pevensies in both Lion the Witch and Wardrobe and sorry, in both Disney's and BBC's is they're not they're probably they don't you don't get the impression that they're poor per se. Um, we really don't know what their social status is, but the way they're acted and by the type of actor that they get for this stuff, I'm not you don't get sort of middle class vibes. Or you do get kind of middle class to upper middle class vibes. You don't get lower class, working class vibes. Now, what I think this is my last piece of free advice for you, Netflix, before I sign off here. So I got some stuff I got to do. Um, something that would be interesting is if they try to explore the Pevensies through the lens of a 1940s working class family. Um, that isn't to say that their sort of social status is this big glaring thing, in your face, or everything is kind of revolved around that. But I do like this idea, this juxtaposition of, you know, poor, middle, lower working class kids who come from a poor working class family. One being whisked away to a grand mansion in the countryside to avoid the onslaught of war that is decimating Britain at this time. But So you get, you get this sort of, Mrs. McCready in the book. She hates the kids. She is so mean to them at the beginning. She's not like an evil person, but she's really adamant that they are just to just really stay where they're meant to stay. Don't muck about. Don't mess about. You get a sort of like, this is kind of what you expect of grown-ups and children, right? Grown-ups always telling kids to not mess about. Whatever. Um, but you could do a little bit of class classism, class conflict with that a little bit. She might be looking down her nose at these kids because of the class in which they come from. Britain is very big on their class. They bloody love it. And they love to look down their noses. They fucking love it. So I think that's what you could explore with this, and that would be a new, interesting thing to do. Um, in addition to that, if you have these kids come to this big mansion, you have this nasty lady who's looking down the nose at her, but then you got the Diggory who doesn't do that. He's, even in the books, he's very much like, she needs to just take a chill pill. You kids are fine, and he likes the kids. But then you take it even further, in which, working class kids make, who live in a rinky dink small crowded flat in London, go to a magical world and become kings and queens, right? They become heroes. They become so much more than what their surroundings are, what their life was. The idea of doing that, and then how they take that experience back to the real world and channel that, I think could be so powerful if done right. So I would love that. That's something that I think Netflix would do well to consider. Can try to consider the social status of the Pevensies, make them come from a working class, lower class family, and then see them rise to the status that they do. Biffer, you have a comment. So they don't make movies for Narnia fans anymore. They want to make films for streaming. They will spin off an Aslan only show. Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, Disney. I don't know who Disney were making their films for. Having said that, I think Fox tried a little harder with The Voyage of the Dawn Treader. I just think by that time it was too little, too late. It's still a relatively forgetful film, but in terms of, trying to make that close-ish to the book, far more than what Prince Caspian was. I think that one was, they attempted to make that for people who like Narnia. But I mean, those are the only films that we have, and it is disappointing, I suppose, that Narnia has missed the boat, and will very likely maybe not get a cinematic, distribution or take. It is probably be always reverted to streaming at this point, unless there's a big change. Who knows? But yeah, I mean, the thing with Netflix is, with the deal with Netflix is, yeah, they do have the there's potential for spin-off-y sort of things. What do you do with that? Am I against it? I don't think so. In principle, I'm not against the idea. I think a Narnia spin-off, a story set in the world of Narnia could be fun. Possibly. Why not? Maybe. Don't know. But it's tricky. I mean, and the world of Narnia is big. A story doesn't have to necessarily take place in the country of Narnia, in the land of Narnia. It could take place outside. I mean, I always love the idea that that Prince Caspian's people, the explanation for humans being in Narnia is that, I think it's like, I can't remember which book it is, but it's like some pirates fell through a rift and found themselves in this magical world, and just established themselves there. and that's kind of the lineage that Prince Caspian comes from. So Prince Caspian is a son of Adam, effectively, because he comes from people who can't fell through for pirates who fell through a rift. I would see that. I would watch that story. Why not? You know, pirates. Some pirates are getting chased by some British, some some British people, and they slip into and slip into the other world. And how do they survive? How do they set up? I would, if done right, I'd be okay with that. What else are you saying? I got one more potential director for the Narnia movies reboot. But if Guts run, then I won't recommend it. No, no, recommend it. I'm happy. No, I want to hear it. I want to hear it. I got a few more minutes. I'm not running out the door. I'm running to just literally keep sitting where I'm sitting and keep writing my research paper. Tim Burton, or is he washed up? Interesting. It's funny that you mentioned Tim Burton, because yesterday a pal of mine, we were talking about this on Twitter, made the interesting comment that he would almost like a sort of gothic, not a gothic, but a ghostly sheen in the film, in the world of Narnia. Um, Kind of referencing the Shadowland, right? And taking that even further to what we know that happens at the end of the last battle. So, spoilers if you've never read the last battle. So I'm just gonna talk about it. So, spoilers for the Chronicles of Narnia, for this 80-year-old series. Um, but it's not 80 years old, but it's close, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, in the last battle, Narnia is destroyed, and they go to the real Narnia, right? And everything else has been but a shadow of the real, right? And so I love this idea, and I think someone like Tim Burton could have accomplished something like that. I haven't enjoyed a Tim Burton movie since Sweeney Todd. He did Sweeney Todd, right? Right? Because if not, then yeah, he did Sweeney Todd. I'm pretty sure. He's got Helen Bonham Carter. Who else would have done it? Yeah, Tim Burton. Yeah, I haven't enjoyed a Tim Burton film since Sweeney Todd. I love Sweeney Todd. I love Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I think I'm gonna say I think his version of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory is the best. It beats the original. Because for one of many particular reasons. But one of the big ones is that he at least sticks to like 90% of the book. Um, Whereas the original just doesn't. Like, Charlie shouldn't have eaten the candy. Why did he do it? Why did he do it? Him and the granddad, they take that floating stuff, and then they go. It's like, no, Charlie. That's the point of Charlie. He's the aspirational hero. He is a good kid. He's not a jackass like the others. Anyway, Tim Burton. I like this idea. I think visually thinking about Tim Burton's like old styles, like if I think about Charlie, I think about Batman, think about Sweeney Todd, and what my friend said about having a ghostly sheen to the world. I mean, that's hella cool. I think that could have worked. Current day Tim Burton, I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe not. Um, but actually thinking about that in terms of the ghostliness, one of the other comments that I made about that was, if you do kind of go into that angle, because there are some cheesy bits in the Narnia series. One of those being Father Christmas. But I'm like, you know what? If like you bring Father Christmas in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, you don't make him the Coca-Cola Santa. You make him this almost wizard-like, gothic-y, kind of frightening figure. And I think of those those creepy pictures of Santa. Those. Let's see if we'll find one. Let me find one before we go. Um, scary. Let's Google scary Santa. I was just gonna come up with stupid like horror stuff. I don't want horror. Like I'll type in gothic Santa. I just bring up gothic stuff, but you know what I mean. The kind of I don't know. I know what I mean, even though Google doesn't know what I mean. Maybe yeah. Nope. Here we go. Something like this. Something like this. Open image. Yeah, there we go. So last thing I'm gonna just do this. Something a bit like that, where it's like, this is a creepy guy. You see this guy in the woods, this is gonna scare you. You know, Santa always scares kids. Kids are, you take kids to go get a picture with Santa. The kids are always afraid of this guy. So I think doing some kind of design that would be like this, I think would actually be a lot of fun. Be a lot of fun. So anyway, I've been here for an hour. I'm gonna go. I was only gonna be here for I was only meant to do this for like 20 or 30 minutes, but I got on a roll. But there we go. Anyway, we're back tomorrow, and Phil will be with me. We're going to be chatting with the band Lena and the Lions. We're going to be discussing their top six, which is going to be a mixture of their favorite um, favorite albums, and favorite films. We're also going to be talking about the music writing process, how they write their music, how they write the lyrics, that kind of stuff. It's going to be a lot of fun. If you haven't listened to them, I recommend go check them out on Spotify and other places. Buy their album. They are a great kind of punk pop band from Sheffield. They're wonderful. But anyway, Biffer, thanks for hanging out, and I will see you tomorrow, maybe. But well, I'll be back tomorrow, and we'll see y'all when we see you. Hasta la vista, baby.